the Middle East on high alert this Tuesday night.
There's a lot of uncertainty here.
Iran's threat to get revenge on Israel and what might help delay the retaliation. Scathing criticism why the UN is comparing Canada's temporary foreign workers program to slavery. And stopping the spread of sexually transmitted diseases.
It's very, very common for someone to have an STI and not have any symptoms.
One province's pilot project and how others could follow suit. Plus, uncharted waters.
Water is a key ingredient for life as we know it.
What's been detected lurking beneath the surface of Mars.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. More than 10 months into Israel's war on Hamas in Gaza, the intense bombardment of homes, schools and medical facilities is still relentless. Talk of a ceasefire, along with the release of Israeli hostages, remains just talk. Uprooted families told to move to safe areas in Gaza find there is no safety. The number of people killed has now reached a staggering 39,897. That's according to Gaza's health ministry. Most are civilians. Children are left without parents, parents left without children. Their grief impossible to imagine. Mohammed Abu al-Qassam lost his newborn twin daughters. Born on Saturday, he'd gone to pick up their birth certificates when the house they were sheltering in was hit by an airstrike. The baby's mother and grandmother were also killed. Any hope that still exists rests on those ceasefire talks set to take place this week. Jackson Proskow has our top story tonight.
For now, it's a slow tit for tat, with Israel striking what it said were Hezbollah positions in Lebanon after Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel Monday. Israel's army remains on its highest alert, waiting for Iran to launch a promised retaliatory strike, revenge for the killings of senior Hezbollah and Hamas leaders in Beirut and Tehran.
Whether this could then lead to a larger Middle Eastern war, we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty here.
U.S. President Joe Biden joined the leaders of the UK, France, and Germany in calling on Iran to stand down.
We'll see what Iran does, and we'll see what happens if there's any attack. But I'm not giving up.
Iran rejected that as an excessive request, despite warnings a conflict could quickly spiral out of control.
If there is a war between Israel and Iran, it's going to be a war between Iran and the United States of America, and Great Britain, and France, and maybe other European countries, and Israel.
Yet there are signs Iran may be willing to at least delay an attack if Israel and Hamas can reach a permanent ceasefire agreement, a deal to bring home Israeli hostages and stop the conflict that has killed nearly 40,000 Palestinians, according to the Gaza Health Ministry.
We are so clearly committed to this because we think it is in the vital interest of the region.
Those talks are scheduled to take place later this week. Hamas has said it will not participate, accusing Israel of negotiating in bad faith. Israel's closest ally is hedging its bets. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has delayed a trip to the region, citing uncertainty, while the Pentagon continues its military buildup.
I think we've been very clear that we're going to support the defense of Israel, and I'm not going to speculate about potential future attacks by Iran.
The region is now anxiously waiting and watching, hoping restraint will prevail. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
This is Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visiting Jerusalem's most contested holy site, the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Known to Jews as the Temple Mount, non-Muslims can visit but are not allowed to pray. Ben-Gvir is calling for that to change, defying even his own prime minister. Palestinians consider Jewish prayers here, which police have been quietly tolerating, a provocation and fear Israel intends to take over the site. Ukraine's government says it has no interest in occupying territory it seized in Russia's Kursk region. Ukrainian soldiers launched the cross-border assault a week ago and keep advancing. The head of the armed forces says they took another 40 square kilometers in the past day. Redmond Shannon looks at what this could mean for the future of Russia's war on Ukraine, and a warning some of the images in the story are disturbing.
A Ukrainian soldier tweaks a road sign inside Russia, changing a village name to give it a Ukrainian spelling. The head of Ukraine's armed forces told President Volodymyr Zelensky that his troops now control 74 Russian towns and villages across more than 1,000 square kilometers, a claim difficult to verify. Zelensky thanked him for capturing Russian soldiers to allow for future prisoner exchanges. Videos from Kursk region appear to show soldiers killed on both sides. These Ukrainians lying dead outside their Canadian-made armoured vehicle. Ukraine says it has no intention of taking over this part of Russia, only to protect its own citizens from cross-border attacks.
So I think the most important are political reasons and political goals.
This Ukrainian MP says he's not worried about the strong response that Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised.
We want to win in this war. And if you want to win, you can't win when you are just afraid of what your enemy will do.
How long and how far Ukraine can stay inside Russia could be key to the next stages of the war.
If they can force Russia to divert the forces, if they can capture more Russian soldiers, again, more bargaining chips, then this could prove to be successful.
The US says it had no involvement in the planning of the surprise attack. Moscow is now keen to portray itself as a victim in the war it started.
We haven't heard a word of condemnation of these actions from Western sponsors of the Kiev regime.
The real victims are, as ever, civilians, only this time in Russia. Tens of thousands fleeing their homes, not knowing when they can return. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Canadian MPs on the Public Safety Committee want to get to the bottom of how two men accused of terrorism offences were allowed into the country. The father and son were arrested in a hotel in Richmond Hill, Ontario in late July. RCMPs say they were in the late stages of planning a terror attack in Toronto. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson has new information on the case. Mercedes.
Donna, Global News can report France provided the potentially life-saving tip to Canada in June that ultimately led police to foil an alleged mass casualty terror plot, according to national security sources. Paris warned Ottawa about Ahmed and Mostafa Eldidi, triggering a national security investigation here. The seriousness of the case and the allegations that Ahmed Eldidi dismembered a prisoner in an ISIS video before coming to Canada have triggered rare unity on Parliament Hill. MPs on the House of Commons Public Safety Committee voted unanimously Tuesday to launch hearings as soon as possible. The committee will investigate how the father and son got into Canada, and perhaps more perplexingly, how Ahmed Eldidi obtained Canadian citizenship. Key witnesses include cabinet ministers, the heads of the RCMP, CSIS, the Canada Border Services Agency, and also on the witness list, Ralph Goodale, Canada's High Commissioner to the UK. He was the Liberals' Public Safety Minister from 2015 to 2019. The hearings will probe if the Eldidi case indicates systemic flaws in our immigration and intelligence systems.
This is a colossal failure and we need answers. That's why we want to have Minister LeBlanc, Minister Miller, with respect to public safety and immigration, come forward.
The government has revealed little, citing privacy in a court case. Those concerns will limit testimony at committee, according to the Liberals.
We have every indication and every intent to share as much information as we can, with the caveat that we don't want to do anything to harm the ongoing case.
National security sources say dates and details of the Eldidi's immigration and citizenship files can be discussed at committee without jeopardizing a criminal case, expressing the charges are terror, not immigration related. Meanwhile, the government's own internal investigation has been struggling to identify key facts for more than 2 weeks. Intelligence about when and how the Eldidis got into Canada is still unclear, according to sources. Donna?
Okay, Mercedes in Ottawa, thank you. A United Nations investigator is blasting Canada over how temporary foreign workers are treated. He spent 2 weeks in Canada in 2023 and concluded the program serves as a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. Foreign workers are brought in to ease labor shortages, but as Mackenzie Gray reports, there are now calls to overhaul the program.
It's a Canadian program that's run for nearly 60 years, but now the United Nations is calling it out. A recently released UN investigation says Canada's temporary foreign worker program serves as a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery.
The allegations that are made in the report would come as no surprise to any immigration lawyer in Canada.
The UN Special Rapporteur into contemporary forms of slavery points to how many temporary workers are tied to an employer through a closed work permit, meaning they're only allowed to work for the company that sponsored them to come to Canada, leading to examples of what he says is underpayment, wage theft, physical, emotional, and verbal abuse.
When a foreign worker is on a closed work permit, that employer holds the key to them being able to stay in Canada on a temporary basis, sometimes on a permanent basis.
The Special Rapporteur came to these conclusions in part during a 2-week trip to Canada last year and provided limited statistics to back up his claims, but he does point to the explosion of the temporary program in recent years. In 2018, there were 84,000 temporary foreign workers, while in 2022, it jumped to over 135,000. Many of whom have come as low-wage workers.
We're making our businesses addicted to low-wage labor instead of them going and investing in innovation and investing in productivity.
That addiction is in a weakening labor market. Youth unemployment is at its highest level since 2014, and an analysis by Bloomberg estimates unemployment for temporary workers themselves has reached 11%, both nearly double the current general unemployment rate.
It's created increased competition for many of the jobs that non-permanent residents often work in. They're often in lower paying areas of the service sector.
One way the Special Rapporteur says the government could reduce abuse is to provide a pathway to permanent residency for temporary workers, Donna, something the Liberals promised in the last election, but have now backed away from.
Mackenzie, thanks. The United Auto Workers Union has filed unfair labor practice charges against former U.S. President Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk after the comments both men made in a lengthy chat on the social media site X yesterday. Trump praised the practice of firing employees who threatened to strike.
They go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone.
Under federal law, workers cannot be fired for going on strike. The UAW claims Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, is anti-labor. A Trump campaign spokesperson calls those allegations a shameless political stunt designed, they say, to erode his support among American workers. More than 145,000 owners of older Ford and Mazda vehicles across Canada are being told not to drive their cars because of concerns about airbags. The issue is about the previously recalled Takata inflators, which could produce too much pressure when the airbag is deployed. At least 27 deaths have been linked to the defective product in the U.S. Models ranging from 2004 to 2015 could be affected. The automakers are urging owners not to drive them until the airbags have been replaced. In Greece, one person is dead in the country's worst wildfire this year. This drone footage shows the scale of the destruction in suburbs near Athens. The fire is still out of control, but lighter winds have helped emergency crews. Some people have now been allowed to return to what's left of their homes. That fire has burned about 10,000 hectares of land. An unprecedented move for Atlantic Canada. Coming up, what Nova Scotia is doing to try to stop the spread of sexually transmitted disease. In 2023, Ontario became the first province in Canada to offer take-home kits for sexually transmitted infections. Nova Scotia is now following suit at a time when STI cases are reaching highs that haven't been seen in Canada in years. Heidi Petrachik explains how the test kits work and why health experts say they're crucial to stop the spread, plus how more provinces could soon follow suit.
It will come in a package that looks just like this.
These are the kits some Nova Scotians can now access so they can test at home for gonorrhea and chlamydia, a first for the East Coast.
Seek and destroy is kind of what I've said in the past in terms of the ability to identify the infection, treat it, so you prevent the transmission.
Right now, it's a pilot project. People can request a kit online, get it in the mail, and return the samples by mail in the same box.
If you test positive, the pharmacy team that helps coordinate sending out the tests will then ensure that you get the medications that you need.
The goal, improve access where the province's few STI clinics are at capacity. And more than 160,000 Nova Scotians don't have a family doctor to ask either.
It's very, very common for someone to have an STI and not have any symptoms, or at least not have symptoms that are obvious.
The number of sexually transmitted infections in Canada has been increasing. For example, infectious syphilis rates have gone up 109% between 2018 and 2022. According to Health Canada, chlamydia is the most common reportable STI, while concern about gonorrhea has been heightened because of new antibiotic-resistant strains.
We found more chlamydia infections in the at-home swabs than we did in clinic.
A study out of the University of Ottawa led to Ontario's take-home STI kit program. The lead researcher says other provinces aren't far behind.
I know Alberta is in the process of doing a validation, so I think it will start moving across. British Columbia is in the process of doing the validations as well.
A push to stop the spread of STIs by taking steps towards more at-home medical testing. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Adding microplastics to waterways on purpose. Next, what scientists are learning in northwestern Ontario. Tucked in the Canadian Shield of northwestern Ontario are 58 lakes, unlike any others in the world. The International Institute for Sustainable Development's experimental lakes area was set aside for scientists to conduct research, and a new project hopes to shed light on the effects of microplastics on ecosystems. Melissa Ridgen takes us to what's known as the world's freshwater laboratory.
We're on Lake 378. This is our experimental lake that we're using to look at whole lake ecosystem impacts for microplastics.
We live in a plastic world. It's durable and relatively cheap to produce, but made of chemicals that break down into microscopic particles, leaching into the earth, the air, our food, and water. So what impact, if any, do these microplastics have on our waterways? This team aims to find out. These are plastics found in things like water bottles or kayaks or disposable cups.
We have the yellow, which is polyethylene. This is a positively buoyant polymer, so this one floats in water. And then we also add polystyrene, which is pink, and this one is neutrally buoyant, so it's the same density as water. And then we add blue, which is polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, and this polymer is denser than water, so this one sinks. And so we add the 3 different colors and the 3 different polymer types to try and understand the fate of microplastics, so where they end up in the water, in the shoreline, and in the sediment, and also in the organisms.
But first,
everyone takes a small pinch of tobacco, and you can offer it to the lake.
This is Treaty 3 territory. First Nations here support the research, but require everyone to honor the water. Now, work can begin.
Our lake is 1.8 billion liters, which is like, I don't know, over 700 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The amount that we're adding bi-weekly is about 1 cup, similar to what you would find in stormwater runoff around the Great Lakes area. One boat will drive the perimeter of the lake, and then the other boat will drive transects. And this is to try and spread the microplastics as homogeneously as possible.
This is the second year of adding microplastics to Lake 378, home to phytoplankton, bugs, frogs, and fish like pike and trout.
Our hypothesis is, like, we're not expecting to see mass die-offs or like extreme effects. What we're looking at are the subtle ecosystem kind of effects.
And when they're done, they'll clean it all up.
We're going to be looking at mitigation and long-term monitoring of the ecosystem to see it through to recovery. So we'll be looking at different strategies and like how to clean up a lake that is contaminated with microplastics.
Well aware that what they're doing today could protect our fresh water in the future. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Experimental Lakes Area, Ontario.
Could this be a source of fresh water? Next, digging deep on Mars. A Mars lander that finished its mission in 2022 has just delivered a new intriguing discovery. Data from NASA's InSight lander has revealed what scientists call an enormous hidden ocean beneath the surface of the red planet. Although it's not quite game-changing, the findings do add a new piece to the Martian water puzzle, as Eric Sorensen explains.
The InSight lander left Earth 6 years ago.
The first outer space robotic explorer to study the interior of Mars.
With less fanfare than many missions,
Touchdown confirmed.
InSight landed, put down a seismometer and a heat monitor, and sat for 4 years listening, till its power ran out in 2022. A far cry from the Curiosity rover that has spent more than a decade scampering over the Martian surface, delighting Earthlings as it searches for ancient life on the rocky landscape that once had rivers and lakes.
These rippled textures were created billions of years ago by waves in a shallow lake.
But InSight, it turns out, found a subsurface world that scientists could only guess at till now.
Mars once looked like Earth 3 billion years ago. And now it doesn't. It's dry and it's desolate. And so a big question is, where's the water? Where did it go?
With its thin atmosphere, water on the surface of Mars evaporated billions of years ago. But below the surface, the InSight lander, while dormant now, listened over those 4 years to seismic activity from 1,300 Mars quakes. Computer modeling from those signals suggests that just below the surface, the upper crust is indeed dry and fractured. But that way below, 11 to 20 kilometers deep, the mid-crust of Mars is saturated with water, oceans of water. It would be enough to cover the entire planet in water, 1 or 2 kilometers deep. Locked away inside, the water may very well have microbial life from the past or even now.
We know that water is a key ingredient for life as we know it. And it means that it's potentially habitable in the mid-crust of Mars. And so there's just so much to learn when you know where the water went.
Where it went not only saved water from evaporating, it may prevent us from getting to it. The technology to drill many kilometers deep into Mars doesn't exist. Still, the findings add tantalizing evidence that life does exist elsewhere in the universe, and possibly on the planet that we can see in our night sky. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Well, the Perseid meteor shower lights up the night sky with hundreds of meteors every summer, but this one is special. In some countries, the celestial treat aligned with the northern lights, and that created one of the most spectacular natural light shows you will ever see. We leave you tonight with some of our favorite photos from around the world. That's Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.